What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment. And I wanted to go into, because I think that they have scripts, as I always go into, and certain approaches to the Super Bowl. I wanted to go into the last couple Super Bowls and just a few commonalities that I've noticed. Now, again, I just chose 3 years. Some of the things I'm going to go over hold true for like the last 4 or 5 years. None of them have always happened, of course. You're going to have things get switched up. But I do think that marketability is the key undertoning to all of this. So here's our odds, and it's always a good starting point. Going into in other videos before that, why I like the Niners. They're a team I like off the bat. And there's some other ones too, but for the NFC, I really like the Niners. And I'm going to go into, based off the last 3 Super Bowls, I would say it does look pretty good for them. You see the Bills are getting good odds. Bengals is interesting because Burrow, they said he was injured. I don't know if he's going to be missing any of the season, but you would think with someone that they're not sure of their status, they wouldn't be getting, 10 to 1's pretty good. They're the 5th favorite here. I would think the Bills would be a bigger favorite. And when I go into these teams, I'm also going to go into why I think certain teams will fit in and certain teams won't. So there's 5 reasons, essentially, and some kind of tie in together, or 5 commonalities that makes me think we can identify which teams are safe to possibly represent their conferences in the Super Bowl. So if you look back at the last 3 Super Bowls, we had the Chiefs versus the Bucks, where the Bucks won. They won at home. Bengals, Rams, obviously Rams won at home, and Chiefs, Eagles, and then Chiefs won. So we had the 2 home victories in a row, which was been the first time since that they were they would have the home team play at home, or they'd all have it at the same venue. I can't imagine I'm sure it might have happened, but it just seems like it's been a long time, that I remember. But that's not really one of my reasons. I do like the Raiders a little bit, but I don't think they're going to be that blatant about it and have another home team win at home. But again, they are one of the teams I like in the AFC. The first reason, thing that I've noticed that I think we can look out for in next year's Super Bowl, we've seen it in a lot of Super Bowls. And again, I went off the last 3. I thought that'd be fair. They say they do things in 3s. We had essentially a veteran versus a young guy. So in 2021, Brady was the veteran, Mahomes was the young guy. In 21-22, Stafford was the veteran, the young guy was Burrow, and in 22-23, Hurts was the young guy. And at this point, Mahomes the veteran. So it's interesting enough, but what makes it more interesting, and again, this hasn't happened every year. I believe in 2019, Mahomes beat Jimmy G, but for the last several years, the young guy has lost to the veteran in the Super Bowl, with Mahomes losing to Brady, obviously Burrow losing to Stafford, and then Mahomes beating Hurts. So that's the first 2 things I found interesting. We've had a veteran versus a young guy, which is, I guess, a story that they've told for eons. So in something where they're going to entertain people, I could see that being a way to go. And then also, when you have a veteran, if Hurts was out there with another rookie, you run the risk of one of them screwing up, one of them getting a little bit happy feet. And by happy feet, I don't mean like in the pocket. I mean just with how they're playing. They might get a little more frazzled. When you have a veteran on the other side, because again, I think these guys work together, it makes it kind of easier for him to pick up any slack that the other guy isn't doing or might be doing wrong. So you kind of have a veteran to balance it out. They do it in wrestling matches all the time. So in each year we had our veteran who's obviously, hasn't been their first rodeo. I guess Stafford it was, but as far as he's still a veteran. And then you had Brady when Mahomes was young. Then you have Mahomes when Hurts is young. So it is interesting. The next thing and these 2 points kind of tie in together too. And I find it something that is just, I've gone into marketability before, and to me this is even more evidence of that. So if you notice, I tied in the Rose Bowl with because that's considered the most prestigious. Even though they have the championship now, the Rose Bowl is considered the most prestigious college bowl, and we have the Super Bowls, the parallel Super Bowls, and I noticed we have very similar marketability. So we have Notre Dame, which is in Indiana, so that's a central school. Kansas City, Missouri, central, and then the Bucks and Alabama are both east, both actually southeast. So very similar. Then we look at 21-22, Bengals, Rams, and again we got Ohio, and then we have Utah, which is west. It's Midwest, not Midwest. It's just west, I guess. I don't know. You can call it. I don't think it's quite northwest. So like central west, and we have the Rams, which is also west, of course. They're southwest, but still pretty similar. And then we had the Chiefs, Eagles, and we had Utah, and we had Penn State. So two of the three, the Ohio State and Bengals, and then the Eagles and Penn State, the same states went. And for the most part, we had East versus West, Central versus West. It's like they're spreading it out. And that's what basically my fourth point in general, not just college, but it seems like they've done this for a very long time. We seldomly get, two teams from the East playing, each other in the it's not that it never happens, but it's just been a while. I think the last time was the Eagles versus the Patriots, like 5 or 6 years ago. So it is interesting. Lately we really seem to get Central versus East or West, but when it's not that, it seems to be East versus West. And they seem to do it a lot in college with the bowl games. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's marketability. I think it's understanding. They want to appeal to as many football markets as possible, so they spread it across the board. And it just, to me, not a coincidence. And yeah, I found it interesting that the Rose Bowls have lined up pretty well as well. And we had Utah in a Rose Bowl, because there's not that many teams, north of California that, you got the Seahawks. You don't have too many. So I think you get Utah on the Rose Bowl. Again, it just proves to me that they're really trying to make every area marketable. And you'll notice this with things like the Pac-12 specifically. They made that a very, very... I was going over this with somebody, I think it was in the Discord, about basketball. But in football, they made the Pac-12 a very, very flashy, high-scoring conference. Whereas it seemed like, in my opinion, the SEC was more of a bruiser conference. And it just seems like that each conference has its own specialties and weaknesses. And I was going over it regarding basketball, because I've noticed it seems like the West. Oh yeah, because they showed an ESPN article about how all the great guards out of the West, and I was like, well, it's nothing new. The West has always had way flashier players, the more talented players. The East has been known for being the physical teams. The Heat and the Celtics, last two teams in the East to represent them in the finals against the Nuggets and the Warriors. And some might say the Nuggets aren't flashy. If you watch them, they're a flashy team. Jokic, while might not be like the most fun, there's a distinction between fun and flashy. That guy does, 360 elbow passes almost, and he's just crazy to watch. So, but even if they're not, and if you say, okay, they're not flashy, most of the teams out of the West, the Warriors have been there for most of the time. I think the Thunder got there when they weren't, the 1 year they didn't, for the West. So, for the most part, you have the Lakers, obviously. They've been the more flashy ones, and the Eastern teams have been the ones who have really seemed to just be more physical. And in general, the Knicks, a physical team, they're more sound. Then you look at even like the Hawks. They should be a flashy team, but they don't play nearly as flashy as the Mavericks or the Thunder So many teams. So I find it very interesting, not to get off topic, but I think that's what they do with the marketability. And it's kind of the same, in my opinion, when you get down to the divisions in football. You have the NFC West, which is a very physical division, where there's defenses is obviously the first priority, and then you go to the AFC, the AFC East, and then you have, in my opinion, AFC East is more of like a young, maybe not flashy, but a young feisty. I would say feisty is the perfect word to describe the AFC East. Then you have the NFC East. They're just, the same type deal. They're feisty clubs. They play very, very fast paced. They're more flashy, I guess, than the AFC East. But it seems like the divisions are all essentially the same, And then, of course, you have the Chiefs. I always mix them up. Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos, and Chargers. To me, again, just very. Even though the Broncos had an off year, really just 4 high-scoring, explosive teams. So it just seems like a lot of the mark, where these teams are located, reflects how they play, which makes sense because fan bases are all going to like something different. But yeah, I found the marketability interesting. I think it really lines up. And there's one more thing I want to go into before I predict who I think is going to win. Again, it's not much of a prediction anymore. But the last thing that I found interesting as far as a commonality is, again, it doesn't happen every single year, but the last several years, the winner of the Super Bowl went on to have a pretty bad year. Bucks finished, I think it was just 9-8, early exit of the playoffs. Brady had a really rough year, and they were just in a terrible division and did a bad job. And they're the best example here because the other 2 examples, well, we don't have the third example yet, I guess. The Rams are the other example, obviously had a terrible year. And then on the other side, Chiefs lost, came back, and they had a good year. They didn't win the whole thing, but they had a good year, and they didn't get worse afterwards. They won a Super Bowl the year after that. And then the Bengals, they went back this year. They went to the AFC Championship. So I do find that interesting. So looking at all that, again, that also, my first time actually noticing that this actually may support my theory that the Chiefs might not make the playoffs. I brought that up many times, and again, if it's true that the team that wins the Super Bowl, we'll see how it goes. Maybe they don't make the playoffs. And then the Eagles probably have a good year again. That's what I'm guessing, at least. Now, what all this means to me is there's a better than even chance we're going to get another California team, West team. I just have a feeling. It seems like they do it very often, and we have a lot of good teams in California. And while the Chargers would be interesting because it's usually going to be an NFC team, the Niners or the Rams, I really do think it's going to be the Niners. I think they've paid their dues. I think they fit, a lot of the Chiefs, the Rams, and the Bucks. Like, they have players who have a lot of dues that they paid. They fit that box. They have a good lineup, that's got superstars who have never won one. Like I said, basically guys who have paid their dues. Obviously, a sound defense, good fundamental teams. So that, a coach that's respected. So they do fit, in my opinion, a lot of these commonalities. But yeah, I think it's going to be the Niners. I really do. I've gone into how I think there's going to be a gold theme. And I genuinely believe that their year is it's only a matter of time before they get it. And I believe Chiefs get an off year and the Niners finally get it. But yeah, I found that all interesting. On the AFC side, again, we can narrow it down. I have a feeling the Bills are going to not have a great year. They are really going out of their way, and it makes no sense to me to make Josh Allen just seem like he's not that good. So I think he's just going to, his performance is going to drop off, and people aren't going to question it because now they've been conditioned. I'm seeing all these top 10 lists that he's not on, and you got Trevor Lawrence ahead of him. Some people are putting Tua ahead of him. I just don't get it. They're like, this was an undisputed Mahomes versus Allen, rivalry up until they just decided we're going to say Burrow is better. And it just doesn't make sense because Allen hasn't done anything to prove he's not great. So I don't know why or how they're trying this narrative. Obviously, something's not working with Josh Allen and the Bills. So I think it's safe to rule them right out. I would like the Dolphins way before I would like the Bills. And I actually think we could get something like that. Miami versus San Francisco. Florida versus California in an election year would be pretty interesting. So we could get that. Raiders, I like them because of the odds, but then I didn't because they moved them. Now they're like a 10-1 to win the division, which is just really steep. So I think a team like the Chargers might win that division. But I think it's going to be Niners, Dolphins, or we might get, because I know a lot of people are looking at like the Browns and the Ravens. The Ravens I'm just not sure about yet because I have to see what they're going to do with OBJ and Lamar. If they come out of the season looking unstoppable, then I'm not going to like them as much. If they're just kind of getting slowly better each week, then I probably like the Ravens-Niners. And then the other team that I do have my eye on is the Browns. Jim Brown just died. They got the Hall of Fame game. All the guys were wearing the gold jackets. So it's definitely a possibility. Watson paid his penance. And again, we would have Central versus West, which is interesting to me. So yeah, I hope you guys found this, maybe intriguing. I did. I didn't think there would be that many marketable commonalities just because, you have a lot of different areas. You have Northwest, Southwest, East, West. You have North Central. You have a lot of different areas. It's not like it's just East and West. So for them to be lining up this close, I don't think it's just a coincidence. And you can take it further. If you look at the NFC East and the AFC East, by far the strongest divisions, both almost had the entire divisions in the playoffs. The Atlantic Division in basketball, they all made the playoffs. The NL East, really strong. Yeah, three teams really, really doing well that all three can make the playoffs. So, it's like this really across the board. The California team's doing well. The A's are the only team that aren't really doing too well. I think the Padres are going to make a run. But it just does seem that they make certain divisions and certain divisions and areas very strong one year and then not so strong the next. They did it with the Pac-12. I think there was like 6 teams that finished with nine or better wins. Utah had a good year. Washington had a good year. USC had a good year. UCLA, Oregon State.